Tennessee visits Norman, Oklahoma to welcome in the Oklahoma Sooners to the SEC, Mason. It's their first SEC matchup since joining the conference here in 2024. Going down at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tennessee, as of right now, is a 7-point favorite in this ball game, and the over/under is set at 57.5. This is a much anticipated matchup, a game that many SEC fans and fans of SEC teams have been waiting for. We're all ready to see Oklahoma, the new shiny toy in the SEC, right? We're all ready to see what they're made of. And it just so happens, Mason, that Oklahoma is being welcomed into the SEC by Tennessee. And it just so happens that this is one of the best Tennessee teams that we've seen in years. This is a really, really tough matchup for the Oklahoma Sooners, but it's also the toughest matchup that Tennessee will have seen at this point in the season for sure. NC State was a game that, everybody kind of had circled in the offseason for Tennessee as being a game that we're going to see what Tennessee's made of. We're going to see what Nico Iamaleava, I have the enunciation
Hey,
written.
you
Yeah, how
got it.
about
You've
that?
been doing your
How about
homework.
that? Tennessee fans taught me something this week. That is one thing I gathered from the comment section. If my camera was better, I would show you, but I had to write out the enunciation of it on my paper there. But this is a game that a lot of people had circled to say, let's see what Nico has in his bag of tricks, because playing on the road in this atmosphere is going to be a really, really tough task, Mason. Um, let's what do you think about this matchup? Because the first thing that comes to my mind, because I know what Tennessee and Josh Heupel, I know what they're going to look to do first and foremost. They're going to look to run the football in this game. And I think a lot of this game kind of boils down to the fact that, you know, if Oklahoma can't stop the run game of Tennessee, it's going to be a long, long night. It's going to be a long, long night. What are your thoughts on this football game? I feel like a lot of it, obviously, almost all college football games come down to the trenches, but I really feel like an X factor for this one is the Tennessee run game and the Oklahoma run game for that matter as well. But the ability for each one of them to make the other one dimensional here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about kind of set the stage here for this game. This is Josh Heupel's return to his team, the Oklahoma Sooners, where he won a Heisman, won a national championship, coached for a couple of years before seemingly, look, I'm not an OU fan, but it seems like the OU fans kind of ran him out of town for the most part as an offensive coordinator. Obviously, they don't make the hiring and firing decisions, but it seems like he was not very welcomed as an offensive coordinator at OU. So there's a little bit of added fuel to this fire for this football game. And look, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk a little bit more about the game itself. But I think that is a storyline that we will hear about all day on Saturday, and I'm super excited for that aspect of things. But when you get into the X's and O's, and look, we did a preview show, an early preview, just kind of off the dome, Sunday night. Our initial thoughts about this game, but now that we've had a chance to go in and break these teams down, one of the things that I'm realizing, you mentioned the run game for Tennessee, which has been phenomenal. This is a Tennessee team that wants to run the ball first.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, they got some dudes up front, Mark. They got some absolute studs up front, and I don't mean just guys who play really well, rush the pass or anything like that. I mean some big ass dudes. They got a lot of size up front. They're very physical, and I'm not saying that Tennessee's not going to be able to run the football, but what I am telling you is that matchup wise, Oklahoma matches up pretty well inside the box. And one of the things that's going to be interesting, we'll get in. Well, I see you've got the offensive defensive lines up here right now, but I mean, you look at the size here.
Let me
You
let me
got
pull up. Let me pull up. Oh, here we go. This is what
there.
we're
Okay,
talking about.
okay, yep. So you've got Mason Thomas there at 6'2", 240 is what you have him listed at. You got 6'4", 265 with Ethan Downs. Big country boy, right? Coming off the edge there. And then in the middle, you've got looks like 6'1", 320, and then 6'3", 325. Just some really big guys. Dominic Williams comes over from TCU. He's been a stud. And what the thing that Oklahoma is going to have to do in this game to stop Tennessee's rushing attack is play with less guys in the box, because what Tennessee likes to do is spread you out along the perimeter and then kind of run it up the middle. That's their first attack. If Oklahoma is going to want to stand a chance in this ball game, they're going to have to go super light in the box. And I mean super light. I'm not saying 7 guys in the box instead of 8. I'm talking 5 guys in the box. 3 down linemen, 2 middle linebackers. Let's go. I mean that's what they're going to have to do. That's what Georgia has done. Georgia's been the only team that stopped this Tennessee offensive attack outside of South Carolina in 2022. But what Georgia does is they have a light box in the interior, and then they say, hey, you're going to have to beat our 5 guys up front with 7 guys on the offense, right? Because you got 5 down linemen, a running back, and a quarterback that's not afraid to run it. Is Oklahoma going to have the speed to handle that? I know they have the guys up front. I know they have the physicality. We've got the defensive line up there, but Danny Stutzman's 6'4", 245. I didn't realize he was that freaking big. That's a massive middle linebacker, and he plays really fast as well. So physically, Oklahoma's got the dudes to stop the run. Now, whether or not they do it is another story. Again, you've got basically 5-on-5 when you look at just the linemen. So you're going to have a lot of 2-on-1s, and these linemen up front, the defensive linemen for Oklahoma, they're going to have to win some 2-on-1s, and on top of that, while they're holding up their block, somebody's going to have to be side to side. And I don't. That's my question for this Oklahoma defense. Do they have the speed? I know they got the size, but do they have the speed to be able to handle this spread offense, handle the speed or the spread laterally of this offense, and still be able to cover at the same time? That's a big question mark for me, Mark. What do you think about the physicality and the speed of this Oklahoma defense?
Well, first of all, we've got some injuries that we've got to talk about with Oklahoma, because they've got a slew of them, to be honest with you, Mason. And we're not going to get answers on all of these before Saturday, guys. So we'll kind of. I'm not going to dump all of them on you right now, but the reason I bring it up right now is DeJoun Terry is one of the guys that he's questionable at this point. I don't know what. We're not going to get a straight answer. I watched a 45-minute Brent Venables press conference today just to get to the end of it, and him just be like, you know, y'all know as much as I do. They just show up to practice, and whoever's there, I practice them. And so a lot of gamesmanship there, I feel like, from the ball coach. So Dejon Terry went down in this Tulane game this past week, never came back, went back on the sideline, I think, without his pads on and stuff like that. So that's interesting. That's one of your biggest guys right there in the middle of this defensive line. I'm not saying that this offense can't operate without him. And he's a former Vols player, by the way. Kind of funny how that works. I know he'd love to get in there and play against his old team. But yeah, Mason Thomas, R. Mason Thomas. I think you pronounce it R. Mason Thomas. He was one of the defensive players of the week last week. Um, this is a real deal dude on the ends here, and I love the talent that you've got on the ends. Not crazy deep, not crazy deep. You've actually got more options at the defensive tackle position. You've got some guys that have come in. Trying to find my notes here. Grayson Halton is one of them as well, 6'2", 291. He's got 7 tackles and 2.5 sacks already this year. And then David Stone, a guy that we talked about in the offseason, as potentially being a guy, if he can come of age at the right time, maybe this is one of those times. Maybe you get a flash or two from him. He had 2 tackles against Temple. This was, if you don't know, guys, he's a freshman 5-star, came in throughout the offseason there. And look, you've got a mix of really elder statesmen in this room, the defensive line I'm talking about, and then you've got a bunch of young guys. You got a ton of young guys. So we'll see. Can some of those young guys interject, themselves and be able to come up big in a big situation? We'll see. We'll see. Tennessee offensive line wise, though, I really like Cooper Mays and I really like Javonte Spraggins. Those are two really, really strong spots of this offensive line. And then you go and you get Lance Hurd, who was a former five-star guy, get him from LSU, and then John Campbell returns with pretty good bit of experience from last year. Not exactly a returning starter, but a guy that had a lot of reps from last year. Your weak spot's at the left guard spot, and overall, if there is a weakness on this offense at this point, it would be the offensive line. I don't know how much of a weakness you could really point out if you look at Tennessee's numbers this year. But 3 sacks allowed this year by this Tennessee offensive line. That's 1 per game. That's tied for 36. 36 is a good number at this point in the season. There's teams that haven't given up a sack, and obviously that's not realistic as the year goes on. So a lot of those numbers as we get to conference play are going to come back to reality for a lot of these teams. But 3 sacks is not a lot given up so far this year. You know, we're going to see who can win this matchup. Oklahoma needs to get 3 sacks in this football game, Mason. Look, we've talked about this game already some this week. It's not a secret. The path to victory for Oklahoma is more narrow than it is for Tennessee at this point. And a lot of it has to do with injuries and things, but a lot of it also just has to do with Tennessee has been building up to this point over the last few years. And Oklahoma, I love what they're doing with the defense. This is the best defense that we've seen in a while for Oklahoma. But I feel like the offense is still another year away from being able to compete for some of the things that the Sooners fans feel like they have every right to compete for in college football year in and year out. So this is a different looking Oklahoma team that we've seen. And look, defense keeps you in games. How long can the dam hold up? The offense is going to have to give some relief to this defense. I like this defense for Oklahoma. But if the offense can't sustain drives in this football game, give that defense a rest. And by that, I mean play defense with your offense. You got to keep the ball away from Tennessee's offense. If this Oklahoma offense can't do that, it's going to be a long night, and it's just a matter of time before the dam breaks. We watched it happen with Georgia and Clemson earlier this year. Clemson has a really good defense, y'all. But guess what? By halftime, the dam broke. And then they give up like 30 points in the second half. And I hope I don't see that happen with Oklahoma right here. But, you never know. Let's kind of start back from the beginning here because we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that this is Nico Iamaleava. I'm telling you, I'm getting it. I'm going to learn it. Iamaleava. This is his first time going on the road as a SEC starting quarterback, Mason. And I know this isn't a traditional SEC stadium or whatever, but let me tell you something. It will be a rocking. There's a reason Oklahoma was invited into the SEC. And they're very excited about this thing out there in Norman. Okay. I think we have a right to ask questions about Nico in this situation. How will he handle it? The guy seems like he's been really cool under pressure. He seems really mature, wise beyond his football years. I've talked to people about this in the comment section this week. But with all that being said, he's not the only one stepping out there on this offense. There's going to be 11 guys out there, and how are they going to respond to this situation? So there is always a chance that Oklahoma comes out here and they're playing with their hair on fire, and if Tennessee isn't able to put out that fire very early in this football game, watch out because the crowd is going to be breathing down your neck, just like we saw last week at Kentucky with Georgia. Kentucky doesn't have a great home field advantage, I understand. But if you let somebody hang around in a football game and a sold-out crowd feels like they've got a chance, and next thing you know, they do have a chance. That's whenever things get really, really tough out there on the road. And I'm interested to see how Nico handles it. I am not saying that he won't handle it well. I have every reason to believe that he will handle it well. But I still got to see it with my own eyes. And Jackson Arnold has still got things that he's got to prove as a quarterback. He ran the ball really, really well last week. Can he incorporate that into this football game today? He's the leading rusher for the Oklahoma Sooners this year, Mason. So without his legs, can this offense generate enough run game to be able to keep the Tennessee front seven off balance and be able to do things in the passing game as well? That's a big question for me as well. So I know Tennessee comes in here as the knight in shining armor, and they look like one of the best teams in college football, and we both agree with that. But they still got something to prove here. They haven't played a football game like this year. So I am certainly intrigued to see how both of these teams respond. Um, what do you think about these quarterbacks in this situation?
Well, I think that we know a good bit about Nico already. We've seen a lot of pass attempts from him. We've seen some really good football from him, and so I guess I don't have as much of a question on Nico and what he's going to be able to do in this football game. But I do have some questions about Jackson Arnold. It seems like Oklahoma went from, let's in week one, it seemed like Jackson Arnold was passing the ball more. And then in week two, it was like maybe a little bit more run. And then in week three, it was heavy on the run. So are we going to see more of Jackson Arnold tucking the ball and running more design runs? That I don't know. If that's the case, I don't like Jackson Arnold in this matchup. I think, and it's been well documented at this point, but the Tennessee defense is weakest on the back end, but they haven't been tested yet, right? So if you're going to beat Tennessee, you got to take some shots over the top. You got to. And so far, Jackson Arnold has not been able to do that proficiently. I would say he has at times, but not proficiently. Now it sounds like Oklahoma is going to get Nick Anderson back. That's a huge target, a 6'4" weapon, on the perimeter that they've been lacking, and maybe he's able to get open enough, and Jackson Arnold has a strong enough connection with him that a few of those plays go over the top, and he's able to take it to the house. I don't know, but the bottom line is if Arnold's not able to win over the top, they're going to struggle because the run game has been very deficient for Oklahoma already. It seems like a lot of the run game is on Jackson Arnold at this point. He's going to have to prove it with his arm in this week. I think, if nothing else, this game intrigues me the most because we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams from this matchup. And Jackson Arnold has pretty much the whole offense on his shoulders at this point. Doesn't get much in the offensive line, which we'll get to here in a minute. But how does he handle that pressure against this defense? Because they are going to bring pressure. That's the question mark for me in this quarterback matchup. I feel like I said, I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of Nico. I don't. He might struggle on the road here early. Maybe the first couple of series, we may see a little bit of jitters. This is kind of a Heisman moment type of game for him.
Right.
Maybe he feels that a little bit. But Jackson Arnold obviously has more questions to me than Nico in between the two quarterbacks here.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of Nico's game is timing, and his timing has been impeccable so far this year. I mean, excuse me, Mason. Last week there were situations where there wasn't even wide receivers open yet, and he was throwing them open, and that is what I mean by being wise beyond your years. The old saying is, if he's even, he's leaving. Right? You ever heard that? If the wide receiver is even with that cornerback at any point, he's leaving him.
Mm-hmm.
And Nico really trusts his wide receivers. I'm interested to see what he does if somebody gets his timing off a little bit. And I think Oklahoma does have a chance to be able to do that. Because if you don't, look, if we've said it, and we've said it, and we've said it. This offensive line has not been tested. So let's see what they can do if Oklahoma can figure out a way to provide some pressure. If they can figure out a way to provide it. All right, let's talk about this Tennessee defensive front. Mason, have you heard what's going on with James Pierce or not? He has like no stats this year. Played very little from what I understand, maybe like a half of football or something. Um, so do you know what's going on here?
I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I have, in
Tell us,
looking up the
Tennessee
stats
fans, in
and
the
all
comment
that.
section. I know y'all are
Yeah.
watching. Tell us what's going on with that, because I meant to look it up before we got on air. The reason I didn't look it up because I don't feel like it's as big of a deal. I mean, I look. Don't get me wrong. I know that sounds crazy, but this room's really deep. I feel like if he didn't play, I don't think it would make a huge difference. I don't think it changes the outcome of the football game necessarily. Um, Now, if it's a really close football game, obviously I could be wrong on that, but um, this Tennessee defense has looked really good without him, and you know what I'm saying. So, um, Tennessee fans, please tell us in the comment section, what's going on with that. I'm interested to hear. But look, this has been a really good front seven, and we've gone on and on and on about it so far this season already. I love how deep this group is. Um, you guys that aren't even pictured here, Mason, Omar Norman Lott, Elijah Simmons. I mean, they're providing some good depth. Tyree West, with a big, he's a big old defensive end. Joshua Josephs. There's guys that you can just like rotate behind the guys that are pictured here of Bryson Eason, Amari Thomas, Dominic Bailey, just guys that are really, 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 really good. And that's the difference between this Tennessee team and the one that we've seen in the years past. I started the season talking about, you know, how the offense would leave the defense out to dry all the time. And that was literally one of the one of the only things you could point to a common denominator in Tennessee's losses to some of these big football programs like Georgia or Alabama over the last few years. Now they can go fast, which they have. They're one of the quickest teams to snap the football, and they don't have to worry about their defense getting, you know, absolutely wore out. They've got guys that they can rotate in, and that makes all the difference in the world. The reason that I made this slide was more for the offensive line of Oklahoma because I wanted to talk about that. It's been an area of concern. We previewed this team in the offseason. We said, oh, watch out. They're going to have to fix this offensive line or it's going to be trouble. And at times it's been a little bit of trouble. 9 sacks allowed in 2024. That's 118th out of 133. So, I talked about the stats are kind of skewed early in the season, and, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. That's a lot of sacks given up so far in 2024. So, beyond that, we'll get to the running backs here in a minute. But actually, here's the stat right here: 67th nationally rushing yards per game. So you're giving up sacks and you're not doing great blocking for the run game. But I think I got a little bit of a silver lining for this Oklahoma group here. I have Branson Hickman listed as the center. That's the guy that transfers over in the offseason from SMU. Really, really, really good center that is going to do good things here at Oklahoma. I really do believe that. When he went out, it caused an absolute mayhem. You had redshirt freshmen come in, no playing experience, got to jump out there on the line. You already had another injury at the position, so it was just immediately just causing tons of issues on this offensive line. That they haven't played 2 games where they had the same starting offensive line all year. Um, I believe he's going to be back. He dressed for the Tulane game and didn't play. Him and Nick Anderson both. So I think both of those guys come back. You mentioned Nick Anderson already, but I think Branson Hickman's going to come back as well. And if he does, that makes a really, really, really big difference for this offensive line. And those rushing yards, I think, are skewed. I really, really do. I think they're skewed. I know this isn't the deepest running back room in the world, but if you've got Branson Hickman back, Michael Tarquin ended up being a hit. Michael Tarquin is the highest rated offensive lineman on this team, and it's not even close, really. But he's got NFL numbers from Pro Football Focus. Um, so Michael Tarquin is one to certainly. I mean, I think you can count on him. I think you can count on him. If Branson Hickman's back, that puts Jacob Sexton at the left guard spot. He's not worried about trying to go play a tackle position, which he can't play. It just changes a lot, Mason. It changes a lot. You brought in 5 experienced newcomers through the portal this offseason, and then you got 4 young returnees and 5 freshmen. So you got this group right here minus the injuries, and then you got a bunch of freshmen behind them. So this is the group that Oklahoma's going to have to do it with this year. And if they're healthy, I don't think they're half bad. Are they top half of the SEC? I think they're right in the middle. I don't think they're top half. But if you're looking at Tennessee's offensive line, I mean, I know they don't offensive line go on offensive line here, but Tennessee doesn't have the best offensive line in the world necessarily. So I just, you know, I think they have enough guys here. If they get healthy, they can be serviceable. Now, the defensive line for Tennessee, it's going to depend on what they want to do. This is what I'm curious what your take is on this football game. What is Tennessee's game plan here on defense, do you think? Because I think that you're going to be rolling out Jackson Arnold like crazy. He throws good on the run, and not to mention you're giving him an opportunity to run. We saw him take off on design runs a lot last year, and I've heard Tennessee fans say, "Oh, we hope he runs. We hope he runs." He's pretty fast. I mean, and you know, pretty good runner. It seems like he's pretty good at getting out of bounds and everything too. Um, he needs to. But does Tennessee blitz here? That's kind of my question. I feel like Tennessee feels like they should be able to win this without having to bring extra help. And that, I think, needs to be the game plan, at least starting out in this football game. I think you just need to bring four if you're Tennessee, keep your gap integrity, right? And see what they're wanting to do here. Because I think if you over pursue this guy, I think it's big trouble. I think he's going to take off up the middle. He's going to gash you, and he's going to run, and I think he's going to be successful doing it. It's so hard to stop a running quarterback. And with all that being said, you're probably going to have a spy on him. So that's one less guy that you can blitz as well. So if you're blitzing, not only are you wasting a personnel on bringing them on the blitz, but now you've already wasted another guy over here. You know what I'm saying? Shadowing the quarterback. So you've got two wasted players out of 11 out there, and that certainly does create an advantage, I think, for Oklahoma offensively, who have got some really good wide receivers. We'll get to here in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think the game plan should be rush four, right? Sit back. Let's see what they want to do. Let's see what Oklahoma wants to do. They haven't had a strong running game. They're going to want to establish the run, but if you sit back with four, play gap integrity, contain the edges, make sure that that Arnold is not able to break containment, get outside, and then take off. I think that's going to give you the best opportunity to win, at least early on. Now, maybe Arnold's able to take advantage of that. Maybe you see some shots over the middle. Maybe you see some shallow routes that just kind of get squirt behind that defensive line. Um, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what Tennessee is going to be able to do outside of that, because I think that's been the game plan for teams going up against Oklahoma so far, is to win what you can up front with your defensive line, trust the defensive line to get pressure, and then kind of sit back. Then you got seven sitting back in zone and man coverage. Maybe you go single high safety, play some man throughout, and you've got Arian Carter or Peely, containing the quarterback, containing Arnold and spying Arnold. But I don't even know if you necessarily have to spy Arnold right off the bat. I don't think that should be the game plan going into this game. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I say you rush four, play zone, see what the game plan is. Let's kind of get into their hand a little bit here if you're Tennessee, and open it up and see what they're playing. Um, to me, that's going to be the best bet. If Branson Hickman comes back, like you said, that's a huge addition to this offensive line that has struggled. I've got him listed as out. You just never know with these players. But one of the sites I'm looking at says that he's going to be out. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But if he's not able to go, that's a third string center who's got some snaps now under him. Maybe he's playing better, but you've got a lot of question marks on this offensive line. I think you trust the defensive line though to bring four, bring pressure with four, and then maybe in the third and fourth quarter you start seeing some more blitzes and things like that if you're able to get Oklahoma into third and long situations, maybe that's when you start seeing more blitzing and things like that.
Yeah, and you Oklahoma fans, let us know in the comment section what's going on with Branson Hickman. I mean, we can't get a clear answer out of coach, and he's not the only one. It's all these coaches are like that, but Branson Hickman has an ankle injury, and I know that. Is it high ankle? Because if it is, he's out. If it's a regular, just I twisted my ankle, I think he'll be back. He dressed last week. He fully dressed last week. Him and Nick Anderson, and Nick was saying he was going to play last week. We'll get to the wide receivers here in a minute, but he dressed, and so that makes me think that there was a possibility, or in break glass in case of emergency type situation. But if it's high ankle, you know, get a high ankle sprain, you're almost better off breaking your ankle, because it just there's nothing you can hardly do. This Tennessee defensive line, guys, 160.7 total yards per game allowed, and that's as a defense. That's second in the country. This has been one of the best units in all of football. 56 yards per game rushing allowed. We'll talk about the offensive rushing power of Oklahoma, but Tennessee has been really, really, really good at stopping the run so far this year. Actually, let's talk about that Oklahoma running back room right now. Javonte Barnes is the leading rusher for the Oklahoma Sooners so far this year. 31 carries, 126 yards, and a 4.1 average. The Sooners are averaging 4.3 yards per rush in 2024. That's good for 71st nationally. So you're right in the middle of the pack as far as yards per rush. Not bad. Serviceable. Anything over 4, I would consider serviceable. 4.5 or better is ideal. But somebody that kind of popped out to me, Mason, is Taylor Tatum, a guy that we really didn't talk about a lot in the offseason. Freshman, he's had 15 carries so far this year, 102 yards total, 2 touchdowns. That's good for 6.8 average. And then Sam Franklin, University of Tennessee Martin transfer, man, he had over 1,300 yards last year for Tennessee Martin. So a guy that certainly has experience, has reps, and knows what it's like to be successful at the position. We'll see if he can get kind of a larger role, I guess, as the year goes on. Look, if you was to buy a stock, you wouldn't want to buy it high. You'd want to buy it low. Now would be the time to buy a running back stock from Oklahoma, in my opinion. Everybody's down saying this team's not going to be able to run the football. And I understand. I get it. Tennessee is an amazing defense. I'm not saying necessarily just in this game alone. On the long scheme of things, I think the Oklahoma running game is going to increasingly get better as the year goes on, so long as you get some of those pieces back on that offensive line. But Taylor Tatum is a nice surprise for that group. The linebacker room for Tennessee is we kind of already talked about it. I think gap integrity, right? Gap integrity is kind of the key to victory for Tennessee in this one. I don't think you got to do anything special. Tennessee hasn't been a team that, while they do have a lot of tackles for loss this year, they don't have a ton of sacks. They're not bringing a bunch of blitz, and I don't think that changes here. I don't think that changes here. The best defenses in the country, guys. How many times did we talk about it, Mason, as Georgia fans in 21 and 22? Like, man, I wish we could sack the quarterback more. I can't tell if I had $1 for every time that I heard a Georgia fan say that during that time frame. I mean, I'd be a rich man. It didn't make a hill of beans. It was one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best defenses we've seen in the modern era of college football. And they didn't sack the quarterback a lot. They hurried the quarterback. They held him in the pocket when they needed to, and they were able to make teams one-dimensional. That's going to be the trick for Tennessee in this one. Make this Oklahoma offense one-dimensional, and stop the run game and put the game in Jackson Arnold's hand in the pocket and say, beat us with your arm. That's got to be the game plan, I think, here. What do you think about the Oklahoma running game so far this year?
I mean, I agree with you. You look at what they've been able to do. Gavin Sawchuk has been pretty much a non-factor at this point. He's averaging 2.19 yards per carry. There's a reason he's not listed, even though he was kind of favored to be the bell cow back. I think, at least from my perspective, looking at the Oklahoma offense in the preseason here. But Javante Barnes, I mean, he's averaging over 4 yards per carry. It's not half bad. Hasn't found the end zone yet. Taylor Tatum has been a bright spot in the running game. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry. And then Sam Franklin, you mentioned it, the transfer coming in, only 4 attempts, but 45 yards in those 4 attempts. It's good for 11.25 per carry. So, I mean, effectively, it seems like they are able to run the football if they're not going to Gavin Sawchuk. So maybe you see Taylor Tatum get a little bit more involved. Maybe you see Sam Franklin get a little bit more involved in this game plan this week. You've got to find something though, because it hasn't been good enough. You can get great yards per carry, but if you're not getting the carries, it's not going to amount to a ton of yards, right? So to me, I think that Oklahoma's got to be pressured to find a way to establish a run game in this game. Now, on the Tennessee side, the defensive line has been the bulk of this Tennessee defense, and they will be for the remainder of the season. But we haven't seen Tennessee get challenged in the second and third levels of their defense. When you look at the stats, even the middle linebackers really aren't putting up a ton of stats because a lot of a lot of teams haven't been able to get past the first level of the defense, and that's a little bit concerning to me. If a team is able to do that, and that goes back to the Oklahoma offensive line. Are they going to be able to block up front to get to that second level of the defense? That's kind of the wait and see there for Oklahoma. But I do really like the linebackers for Tennessee. Really like Arian Carter. I think he's a great linebacker there, great young linebacker. And then Keenan Peely is the veteran, and he's played pretty well so far this season. I have my concerns. I have my concerns about the run game, but I don't think that we can just say Oklahoma is not going to run the football in this game or this season at all. I think that they have the right playmakers in the running back positions. Um, they're not they're not the best in the SEC at the running back positions, but with some better offensive line play, I do think that the running game does improve. It's got to be a factor in this game. It has to. They've got to go to it. They've got to really on first and second downs find ways to open up the run game. Get yourself in third and short, no more than third and four. And that just it has to be a part of the game plan. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they get better in 1 week, but against a tougher defense. But we've seen it happen before. Scheme can help with that a lot. Um, it's going to be interesting, but that is the matchup to watch. Is this Oklahoma running game versus the Tennessee run defense?
Well, and as we said, Jackson Arnold is the leading rusher for this team this year as far as yards go. So if they're going to run the football, I mean you're going to have to use these guys that you see here on the right side of your slide, and Jackson Arnold's going to have to continue to do what he's done, especially this past week. He did a really really nice job running the football, and I think he's going to have to do that again. I don't think you're going to be able to just rely on one room to get all the rushing done. I think the quarterback's going to have to help out. And we've seen what a rushing quarterback can do for a football team over the last decade. I mean, some of the best offenses that we've seen ever. Even like Joe Burrow and things like that. I mean, running the football as a quarterback is becoming more and more prevalent. Um, all right, we've talked about some of the pass catchers for Oklahoma. We talked about Nick Anderson, hopefully going to be back for this football game. I have every reason to believe that he will be. And he's a young guy, but really, really popped last year as a freshman. And man, he is the real deal, I do believe. So if you can get Nick Anderson back to play alongside Deion Burks, who has been one of the better wide receivers in college football so far this year, the most receptions ever through their first 3 games as an Oklahoma Sooner. And you go ahead and go back and look at some of the Oklahoma Sooners wide receivers that have been through that program, over the last decades. Been some really, really dang good ones. He has the most receptions and I believe the most yards through first 3 games of his career at Oklahoma. Deion Burks is a real deal, folks. Just a human joystick, very, very hard to deal with. a guy that's got a ton of tread left on the tires. Didn't even play high school ball all the way through. Really is just now starting to hit the pinnacle of his athletic, life. So Deion Burks is really starting to feel himself. Watch out because we don't know a ton about this Tennessee secondary. It hasn't been tested, but I can tell you right now, I don't care how good they are. Um, Deion Burks is going to get his. So if Jackson Arnold has got time to throw the football and he can put it out there accurately, Deion Burks will do his thing. So I fully, fully, fully believe that. This is the best unit on this offense, and it's not even close. This wide receiver room. Now, I believe I'm trying to think. There was another one. Nick Anderson was one that was hurt. Andrew
Jaleel
Anthony.
Farouk. Okay.
Well, Farouk's gone for a while.
Yeah.
But that is a good point. That is a good point. So, Jalil Farouk gone 6 to 8 weeks. You know that sucks. That's one of your most veteran guys. Is he the best playmaker on this team? No, it's not even close. But tons of reps, tons of experience, all that good stuff. Um, Andrew Anthony. Is it possible that he makes his debut for the year? Right. That's a guy that nobody's going to talk about in any breakdown anywhere you look. But if he comes out there and plays, that's just one more thing to worry about. But Brendan Thompson's had a good year. Bauer Sharp's had a good year. Is the Tennessee secondary finally going to get tested? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you hope so, because like you said, this is the strength of this offense. They are banged up. When you go down the list, Gibson, it sounds like he's going to be out, knee injury. Petaway is questionable. Um, you got to find ways to get Nick Anderson and Deion Burks, really all four of these players involved. They Oklahoma has shown an ability to go to the tight end. Bauer Sharp has played pretty dang well. Let's see, he's second on the team with 10 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Also, the other tight end, Jake Roberts, has 4 receptions for 56 yards. So, if it's a big ask. It's a big ask, but I do think that you can undoubtedly say that the Tennessee secondary is going to be challenged more this week than they have in any other week prior. I think that's a given. You don't bring Jackson Arnold in here to Oklahoma to have him run the ball all the time. That's not the game plan. He's been able to do it effectively, and I think that him trusting his legs will be a huge factor in this game. I don't think he's going to run for 100 yards though. That's not the game plan. The game plan is to challenge the Tennessee secondary, and I believe that this offense will find ways to do that. They're going to get creative. You'll see some wide receiver screens, some quick slant throws and quick throws, quick wide receiver, like I said, wide receiver screens and throws to the perimeter and things like that. You've got to get the ball in Nick Anderson and Brendan Thompson and Deion Burks' hands specifically, and let them make some plays in space. That's your key to victory here. On top of establishing a run game. I don't think Oklahoma wins the game on the run. I mean, we mentioned the running backs, we mentioned the offensive line. They don't win the game running the football. That's not going to be the case. You're going to have to go over the middle and go deep occasionally. I don't have any questions with this wide receiver room. I really don't. I feel like they're going to be open in some cases.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not Arnold can stay upright, have time, and then deliver a strong throw. If he plays like he did in week one, I thought he looked really smooth. I thought he was throwing the ball really well. Just didn't really have the time in that week. And if the offensive line for Oklahoma, holds up and stands their guys up, then yeah, I do think that this Tennessee secondary gets challenged more than they have all season long.
Yeah, I mean the jury's still out. I mean, 105 pass yards per game allowed. That's good for fourth in the country for this Tennessee secondary so far this year. 5.1 yards per pass allowed. That's good for 20th. I mean, just haven't been challenged. And you're right, Mason. It's going to depend on Oklahoma's ability to protect the quarterback. We already talked about the Oklahoma defensive line versus the Tennessee offensive line at the beginning of the video, so we'll kind of just keep it moving. How you doing? Keep it moving. Um, Tennessee running backs versus these Oklahoma linebackers. This is a really really pivotal point of this college football game right here. Really any college football game, but specifically this one. Everything that Tennessee does is based off of, the dive play, the read play, and then spreading you out and then going deep. So none of that stuff works if Tennessee can't run the football. Tennessee has to be able to run the football on first and possibly second down if needed, but specifically on first down. Danny Stutzman is a linebacker for Oklahoma. If you have been under a rock for the last few years, welcome back to society. Danny Stutzman is a joy to watch. He's already got 33 tackles this year, man. Just absolutely tearing it up. We're gonna have to see him go to work, dude. I mean, this is gonna have to be his masterpiece right here. And I'm not saying that he's not up to it. I'm certainly not saying that at all. Um, Samuel Omosigo. This is a guy that I think we mentioned in our preseason video. He's down there at the bottom of your linebackers page there. I don't know how much he gets in this football game, but he's a guy that's emerging and providing depth. He's got 12 tackles so far this year. Kip Lewis is a guy that Oklahoma fans and everybody will know. So he's one of your inside backers there. But I'm gonna call him Sam O. Sam O is coming on. Will they be able to hold up against this Tennessee running back and rushing attack? 2.22 yards per rush allowed in 2024 so far for the Oklahoma rush defense. That's good for 11th nationally. They've been really, really good against the run. Tennessee has been really, really good at running the football. 6.96 yards per rush. So what gives here, man? That's really just kind of my question at this point. This is good on good right here. This is absolutely good on good, and Dylan Sampson is just the truth. I mean, he's really really good. 45 carries, 357 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7.9 average. Crazy. Deshaun Bishop doing really well this year. You've got options with Peyton Lewis and Khalifa there, so tons of options. Not a worry in the world as far as depth. This is where this football game starts and ends, in my opinion. Can Tennessee run the football? What do you think?
Well, I think that they're going to struggle to run this week. I mentioned it earlier. This OU front seven, if you want to call it that, front five. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully they play a front five, maybe a front six if the tight ends get involved with Tennessee, which they've been great by the way. I mean, Kitzelman. I remember picking at him in our Tennessee preview. We were talking about his best attribute was that he's a scratch golfer, and he looks like the best tight end on the team. So that's just throwing it back in our own faces here. But I think that the OU front is going to be able to handle Tennessee's offensive line pretty well. I think that when you look at the physicality that these linebackers play with and the size that these linebackers play with, I think that they're going to be able to fill the holes and plug some holes and make it a long day for Dylan Sampson. I think if you hold Dylan Sampson and you hold Deshaun Bishop to under about 150 yards total, and just the running game in general, not just those two players, but the running game in general. If you hold Tennessee to under 150 yards rushing, I think you set yourself up for success. Not saying that they can't beat you with the pass, but you want to make them beat you with the pass. You want to make Nico feel that pressure, and I think that this OU defense is going to be able to do that. Now the question to me, it all revolves around scheme. OU does not really play five in the box. They don't really play a light box. That hasn't been what Venables has wanted to do with this defense so far. How do they play this? That's the biggest question mark for me. But as far as size and physicality and run defense and things like that, yeah, OU, they can definitely hang with Tennessee's running game. I was really impressed as I broke it down a little bit further than when we had talked about it on Sunday night. I do feel like this OU rush defense is elite, and better than anything Tennessee has faced by far. By far. I mean, really, really good. Um, I think that if Nico and Tennessee's going to win this game, it's going to be with Nico's arm, or maybe him running the football. And I don't know that there's a linebacker. Maybe Kip Lewis. Maybe he can spot Nico, but I don't think that these linebackers can really keep up with the speed of Nico if he decides to let loose and tuck the ball and run. But yeah, it was kind of surprising for me to come to that conclusion because I felt like going into this without looking at it deeply that OU was going to struggle to contain these running backs. But now I feel pretty good about this OU rushing attack or rushing defense, I should say.
Well, that changes a lot of things in this football game. It really, really does. Um, and one of our last, it is our last little thing to talk about here. The Tennessee pass catchers. You mentioned Kitzelman got a couple of touchdowns this year, but um, a little surprising who's leading the pack in this group. Brew McCoy is kind of a name, and Squirrel White is a guy that's not even pictured here. And it's not that he hasn't played or hasn't played well; he's played pretty good. Brew McCoy has played pretty good, but Deontay Thornton and Chris Brazzell are the leading receivers on this team and have looked really, really good. There's plenty of weapons here, I guess is my point. There's guys that aren't even pictured that you thought would maybe be one of the best wide receivers on this team, right? So I feel really good about the Tennessee wide receiver room. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I like these guys a lot. I liked them in the preseason. I like them now. 303 pass yards per game. That's good for 23rd in the country. 9.9 yards per pass attempt. That's good for 15th in the country. So, as pretty much any statistical category in that has anything to do with Tennessee at this point, it's really good. The secondary for Oklahoma, 187 passing yards per game allowed. That's good. That's good for 58. That's not like terrible, but it's not great either, for sure, especially considering who you've played so far at this point. But definitely some high spots on this team. But look, man, here's the problem: Kendall Dolby, Gentry Williams, those are guys that didn't dress out last week, and this is where I get really concerned because while I love Woody Washington and Billy Bowman, I think those are really, really strong pieces. Robert Spears Jennings, I like as well. They're at the other safety spot. I don't have a ton of questions there. You're incredibly thin at nickelback right now, which they call the cheetah. Um, you're incredibly thin, and if you don't get somebody back, it's it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough there in the middle of the field with all these weapons that Tennessee's got. Gentry Williams is one of your returning starters on defense. If you don't have him back, that's a big problem as well. That's one of your starting corners, and you're just absolutely going to need his help. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens, on Saturday. This is what makes me hesitant to bet this football game. If you're betting on the Oklahoma side, because it's like you just don't know who's going to play, and that makes it really tough. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like what Kenai Walker, the cornerback, has been able to do. 3 pass breakups so far. He's played pretty well for Oklahoma, but this is and I think that the Oklahoma secondary has been pretty good. Overall, they're definitely a defense that's built similar to Tennessee. Really, they're built up front. Um, they got to win up front to help the passing game out. I think that the passing numbers for this defense is a little bit skewed because the offense has played so poorly and they haven't extended drives. They've left the defense out there. So if the offense plays a little bit more complementary football, I think that the secondary looks a little bit better as well. But when you look at the Tennessee pass catchers, they're so deep. Art. I mean, this is one of the deepest, if not the deepest, receiving group in college football. Outside of these four, I mean, you still got Holden Stays, who might be the most talented tight end. We're still kind of waiting on a breakout game for him. It seems like it's been the Miles Kitzelman show so far. I don't really expect that to continue necessarily. I think they're both really good tight ends, but Holden Stays was kind of the guy going into the season that Tennessee fans had circled and said, yeah, this is our tight end that's going to go out and be our pass catching weapon. Um, he's playing pretty well though. And then the 5-star freshman Mike Matthews, he came on last week. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep him off the field much longer with the way that he was playing and some of the acrobatic catches that he was making, and just looks like an absolute stud out there. So get him involved. Get these four pass catchers involved. It's going to be a long day for this secondary for OU. They're going to have to find some ways to turn the ball over, hit some pass breakups and things like that. And that, to me, that's really about the only way that this secondary beats this wide receiver group, because man, this group's deep. This group's deep for Tennessee. One of the best that we've seen in a long time, not just for Tennessee, but uh, in the SEC in general. And I think that they're gonna have their numbers this week for sure.
Very interesting to me that this week that the number hasn't moved. This is one of the only games that we're covering this week that the line hasn't moved. Have you noticed that? It's been at 7 since our early thoughts episode on Sunday. So, I mean, there can only be two reasons for that. The money's even coming in on each side for OU or Tennessee, which is possible. I don't know where the money's going on this one, what direction. Or Vegas is holding in there for a reason or another. So either way, I'm interested to see kind of where the money goes at the end of this week. I'll be completely candid with you, Mason. I've already got my money on -7 Tennessee. That was
Mm-hmm.
that was the first line, because my anticipation, Mason, was that the line was going to go up. That was, I was thinking that, all right, so it's starting at 7, we'll probably end at 10. That's what I thought, but it's not moving. And I did that before I did my deep dive, just because I was trying to get some value on a bet. I mean, you got to watch these things at the beginning of the week, guys. If you're not watching at the beginning of the week, you're probably getting less and less value on whatever you're betting by the week, weeks in. Um, but I think this game's going to be closer than what people think.
I do too.
I
I do too. I'm staying away from this game from a betting perspective.
Yeah,
There's too much emotion in this game and in college football in general. I think that Tennessee is a better program right now, but playing on the road, OU gets their first chance in the SEC. Um, I think that this place is going to be electric. It's a night game. I mean, and there are so many intangible non-football factors involved with this. The Josh Heupel story. There's just a lot of emotion built up into this game that I don't recommend betting it. I don't even recommend betting the over under. We've seen this story time and time again, and it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. I've heard nobody pick OU and the points. I've heard nobody
yeah.
pick OU to cover in this
And why
game,
is
and
the line not moving? And that was my whole point. Nobody's
it's a
picking OU,
huge it is
and the
a
line's
huge
not moving.
concern. It's a huge concern for me. Um, I would lean with you, Mark. I would lean Tennessee to cover, but I think I really do kind of feel like it's going to be a close game, and that my heart's telling me that this is going to be a really close game and an instant classic type of matchup. I think Tennessee gets the win at the end of it, but we're going to learn a lot about these teams, and I think that both of these teams are going to walk away with respect for the other team by the end of this game, because I think it's just going to be a super emotional battle here, and I cannot wait to watch it. This is to me, I think this is the best game of the year so far, and I think it's going to play out that way as well.
Yeah, it's got all the makings for it. Um, now, there's a possibility Tennessee runs away with this. I'll
Yeah,
admit that. There's a possibility. I don't see there being a possibility that Oklahoma can run away with it. But I know what all y'all are saying in the comment section and all that, and I know you love your Tennessee Vols, and I'm super impressed with Tennessee. And if this is a close game, it doesn't mean that Tennessee's not as good as what we thought. Okay, it doesn't mean that at all. Let me tell you something. Do you think that Georgia struggling with Kentucky last week had any bar or effect on Georgia being able to or not able to win a national championship? No, it didn't. Tennessee wins this game by 1. It's not going to matter at the end of the year if Tennessee, wins all their football games, or they're 11-1 and they're going to the college football playoff. It's not going to matter if they won this game by one. This game, no matter the outcome, I really, I'm really just looking forward to it. I know this is going to be a really fun one, um, and the closer it gets, the more I feel like it's going to be a close game. I think Oklahoma's best football is going to be towards the end of the football season this year. Let's see if we
Absolutely.
can let's see if we can get a glimpse of it in this football game, and that'll tell us a lot about where Oklahoma's at as they enter the SEC.